Hi everybody, it's Teresa with ReeseDixon.com, and my ornament for today is this adorable flannel shirt ornament. I'm pretty excited about this one because I am a child of the 90s who grew up in Seattle. So flannel shirts were pretty much our uniform. And I found this beautiful flannel with a little plaid pattern on it in the remnant section of my fabric store, and it was just kismet. It was meant to be. So since I have a lot of patterns on the tree that are already a classic shirt shape with sleeves and things, I wanted to make this one a different shape but still reminiscent of that traditional flannel. And so I did it by making this sweet little collar and adding these buttons. So this is so easy. Let me show you how I did it. First, you'll need to get your pattern pieces ready. This is the piece that will be the back of your ornament, and I cut it to be 3.5 inches tall and 3 inches wide. Although, like most of my patterns, it's pretty arbitrary. But the front is made of 2 pieces, and I cut these 3.5 inches tall and 2.5 inches wide. This is actually quite a bit wider than you'll need, but it gives you tons of room for folding and maneuvering, which you'll see. So you can really cut this just about any size you want or happen to have fabric for. You just need your front and back to be the same height and enough room for the front pieces to overlap, just to be as wide as the back, okay? So I'm gonna lay my back piece down on the desk here, and that's going to help me measure as I'm overlapping these front pieces. And so I'll lay one side of my front down, and then with the other, I'm gonna fold it over, match up the other end here, and then kind of adjust that fold until it looks like I like it. So regular flannels, you know, they overlap so that you can have the buttons button. So you don't want this to be exactly in the middle. You want it to be about 1/2 inch off to one side so that there'll be room for your buttons. And so that's about how I have mine outlined. And so then I'll just pick up these 2 top pieces and sew that down right up on that edge there. And you can see how much there is overlapping. There's tons of room here. So you can cut these quite a bit thinner if you're trying to save fabric or if you only have a little bit. But this will give you plenty of room if you make any mistakes or anything unforeseen happens. Okay, so I'm gonna sew down that middle line to make the front placket of my shirt. So with that done, we just have to add on the collar pieces before we're ready to add the back. So for this, I just have these 1.5 inch squares. And all I'm gonna do is fold them in half to make a triangle shape, and then line the raw edges of that triangle up with the edges of the front of my flannel. So I'll put a pin in that. We'll do the same on the other side. Fold it in half, and then raw edges will go in the seam. It might not look like a collar here, but don't be tempted to make these squares smaller, because once we sew the seam allowance, you're not going to want them to be much smaller. They'll be right once you take out the seam allowance. Okay, so before we sew the back on, we need to add our ornament hanger. So just like I always do, just a little loop of some kind of thread or ribbon or yarn, and I'll put that right in between those 2 collar pieces. And then I'll put my back piece on the top and pin all those layers together. So just like I've been doing with all of these other pillow ornaments, I'm gonna start at the bottom, go back and forth to reinforce that point, come all the way around, reinforcing the top, and then back around to reinforce that other point, leaving about 1 inch free at the bottom so that there's room to turn it and stuff it. So with it all pinned together now with my little sandwich in place, now I'm going to just sew all the way around the edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance to make room for those little, the little collar plackets, the little collar pieces, and then turn it right side out. With my piece all sewn up, now I'm going to snip off those corner pieces right up to the seam line, because that always makes your corners sharper when you're making a pillow, because there's less fabric to stuff in that small little area. And I'm just going to grab onto my ornament hanger and pull that through to turn this right side out. Come on, the little guy. I see you in there. To make this look even more like a flannel, I have to add some buttons. So I raided my scrapbooking stash for these tiny little buttons that I used there and just glued those on with white glue. And then after a good dry, it's ready to stuff and sew shut, just as we've been doing for all of our pillow ornaments. And that looks like this little guy. I think he's really sweet. If I had a bigger tree, I think I might have made him bigger, but the tree that I'm filling up this year is pretty small and I've already got a ton going on it. So this little size will work perfect. It'll just be a little spot of detail on the edge of my branches and just be a little charming, snuggly reminder of my adolescence in Seattle. And I love that it just gives the impression of these snuggly clothes without everything looking so literal, like miniature versions. And it gave me a great opportunity to bring in this charming little flannel. So I call this a success all the way around. I hope that this was inspiring to you and that you will bring a little festivity into your holiday this year with something you've made yourself. If you have any questions, just leave me a comment and I will help you out. And be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any of my big ideas. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.